Animation workflow. Your final animation is not about the journey, it's about the final destination. It's about what the audience sees, not what you did to get there. The result that you want to get can be achieved in many different ways. However, as the animator, it's really up to you to find the way that suits you best so that as you continue and hone your craft, your own workflow will develop. There are many things to think about when approaching animation. Now, with that being said, I recommend doing everything that the school encourages you to do. It's a really great, like, vanilla workflow. Video reference, blocking, strong poses, break down your blocking, spline it, polish it, you're done. I started there. I recommend everyone kind of start there. It's the basics, it's the foundation. And then from there, you're going to develop who you are as you work. When they look at your demo reel, they're not going to ask you how you did it, right? They're going to look at your final product. So really what matters is that you just have a nice demo reel when you go to show it to recruiters. How you get to it at school, I recommend just trying everything that's encouraged, because you don't know what you're doing. You're kind of learning, as you go. And then once you get into a studio environment, you're going to really have a lot of time and practice to really massage that workflow and look at other people's workflows. All right, so straight ahead. When keyframes are set one after another by an animator right up until the end of the scene, it is called straight ahead animation. The animator will already know where in the story the scene will fit and also what concepts should be included. However, the way it will be animated will develop as it progresses. Subtle naturalistic motion can be achieved, leads to spontaneity. It can easily box yourself into a corner. So that's the one drawback. I do straight ahead blocking. I will start at the beginning, put my main key. I might put a couple big, like, gold key poses that are like really big shifts in something. And then in between them, I'll just straight ahead. I'll start with one part of it and I'll straight ahead it and I'll go to the next part of it. And I'll layer straight ahead, which is weird. I'll do just the direct mover or the body mover and get that path through the shot working. Then I'll go in and do the spine and the head. Then I'll go in and do arms and legs. So I have a little bit of everything. Pose to pose. Pose to pose animation is where animators decide what they're going to do beforehand, kind of like what we're doing here. Particularly focusing first on keyframing the extreme poses, which are needed for the story. So we call them story poses. And then moving on to animating the keyframes between these poses. This will help establish your spacing, your arcs, your weight. And of course, a guide is made up of finished poses to help with timing and motion. This will generate really strong poses, communicate the intention of action. Poses create a guide to help you with your timing and your acting. So it's definitely a lot more structured. And of course, it can become very caricatured. So over the top movements, over the top stuff. So you have to decide, this is the style of the show, so I have to work within that style. Layered. In layered animation, the animator only animates one part of a character at a time. This is done sequentially, animating each individual part right through the sequence until finally the whole character motion is animated, as opposed to the whole character being animated at once. Creates physically accurate and fluid motion, easy to manage complex actions. Movements can easily become disconnected, which is what happened to me my first time, but I've gotten the hang of it since, and I use it tastefully. I don't do it for everything. There's some pose-to-pose stuff I really like that I'll use, but I'm probably like a 90% layered animator now. Stepped or spline. Maya uses stepped or spline curves to interpolate between the keyframes. However, this impacts heavily on how the animation looks. This statement is a reason why students don't pass classes. It's that Maya is doing a lot for you. It looks flat, linear, dead, spliney. If you have key poses which haven't any animation between them, this is called stepped curve. When the computer fills in the keyframes between, it's called a spline curve. Blocking out the shot in animation workflow that is pose to pose typically begins with stepped curves. However, when blocking for a layered or straight ahead workflow, you would go straight into spline. There are advantages and disadvantages of both methods. Stepped. The advantages of doing stepped makes it possible to focus on the most important storytelling poses. A concept can be conveyed by using a small number of keyframes which will keep the scene very clean and manageable. At Blue Sky, we kind of are required at this point to show our story poses before we go any further, just to make sure they can see what we see in our head. Really quick, take us one day, put it up, they give us notes, we go back. The animator can easily change a particular pose and timing with little impact on the animation as a whole. Not all connected yet. What are some disadvantages? It's difficult to really see timing as the brain fills in the in-betweens. So every single person is susceptible to that. We're all built the same way in that regard. So as students, you don't know what it's going to look like when you hit the spline button, which I recommend doing often just to see what it looks like. But we will watch it over and over and go, yeah, I'll buy that. The reality is our brain's going, it's like working. Your brain's like, yeah, this will make sense. This looks okay to me. But when you hit spline, it's not, right? There's a lot of tweaking required to get the same feeling once it's been converted to spline, and it can also lose its snappiness. So let's say my hand goes over here and then it comes back, right? So I go over here and then I hold it for a little bit and then I come back. In stepped mode, which most students do, is they have keyframe 1, keyframe 2, keyframe 3. I would have keyframe 1, keyframe 2, keyframe 3, keyframe 4. And now it puts the hold there. So when you hit spline, it will hold it there. And that snappiness is still in there, right? Otherwise it goes like this. And I want to go, boop, boop, right? So you're forcing timing in your stepped curves. So it's one way to kind of help you negate like things feeling very swimmy and even. All right, spline. Advantages. An animator can tell early on how the timing of an animation will turn out with no surprises. There's no translation from step to spline. You're just in spline from the beginning. It allows the animator to work more organically, adding detail when needed, such as follow through and overlaps. This helps the animator achieve a better understanding of how the animation will transition between poses. And that's why when I first did that test, while it was really bad, I kind of learned the graph editor a lot more and the power of it. But I also, at Blue Sky, not doing that all the time, I've learned the power of screen space and just animating like a 2D animator. You combine those two, it's pretty cool. You're pretty flexible. So spline, the disadvantages, and they are very big disadvantages. The animator can be distracted from the key storytelling points to focus on things like messy arcs and intersections. They can get really messy if you don't know what you're doing. Right? An animator may have to create lots of poses to convey a simple action, which makes things complex and time-consuming. The main idea behind this is if you don't critically think about what's moving and what's reacting, what starts, what stops, and keeping track of every part of the body, and then you're working in a layered approach with spline, like you could get disconnected. Things are moving differently and they're not reacting to each other. So you really have to be intentional if you do a layered method. You really have to kind of know how it all works together.